do you want to get started with some of those higher voted ones? Looks like one of these has 5 votes.
Yeah, we can go ahead and kick it off with that one. So by far the most highly voted topic, how do you manage changes to critical analytics content? Um, so I can actually kick this one off. I actually wrote this one. I was having a conversation with someone from Continuous the other day, and we tend to see this quite often where we have a client who is either developing content using a business intelligence tool like Tableau or managing, more of a legacy report, something like an Excel dashboard. But either way, most organizations tend to have content that's shared either across the enterprise, like a daily report with the company's high-level financials or something like that, or something that's presented to like a C-level, like a CEO, CFO, some executive individual within the organization. So when you have those situations, it's important that you think about how do you go about making changes to that content, because you don't want it to be as simple as just going in, making a quick update and backing out, because more often than not, you'll end up with some unexpected errors or consequences because of that. So I guess, different tools have different ways to manage changes. I guess my question for the group is, when you've seen this in the past, what are the processes or things you've seen happen in order for those changes to get made?
Mike or Matt, I can speak to some of the ways that we do it, and I don't know that we do it like very well, but we have some real highly used Tableau dashboards, for example, and we have had our C-level executives come back and request changes to them. Specifically, recently, we've been asked to add some COVID-19 data to these dashboards, more along the lines of we're trying to keep track of which of our customers are still open, which are like running on a reduced capacity, things like that. So we extensively use our dev server. We sort of try to have a lockdown version that's in production, and then any requested changes only get made in dev, and then that link gets distributed for consumption and testing and those types of things. And only once all parties involved sign off on these particular changes do we then deploy them to production. So I know that's a really simplistic approach to it. We're not doing anything as far as keeping track of like version changes and things like that. We just haven't had the need to do that. So I think we're kind of taking a real simplified approach that probably works for us right now, but might not long term. So I did vote for this one, wanting to hear what other people are doing. But in a nutshell, that's what we're doing at Rexnord with some of our tools and things, is just locking down these different versions. On other projects where I have had more extensive revisions, I do keep copies of the sort of blessed versions from each of those, or I should say the blessed files from each of those versions. But again, I know that's like a short-term solution, and when we get a little further down the road with some of this, that won't work so well. But
Got it. That's really helpful. I guess a kind of a related question. First off, your whole process does make sense. I mean, there's simple ways of doing it, and then there's, very like mature, robust ways of doing it. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, most folks tend to do the same thing you're describing. I guess the other question that comes to mind is, how do you determine what content should be controlled using that type of process versus other content that, obviously you just want to make self-serve to people where they don't have to go through such a robust deployment process?
yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. We've only so we overall lock down our production environments. Most users don't have the ability to just publish something to production. And if they want to, they basically submit it to our BI team, which I'm a member of, to have it approved and moved to production. So I don't know how well that's going to work long term. I sort of warned the other folks at my company about us getting in the business of doing nothing but moving people's content to production. But for right now, it seems to work. I know very well, we do have people who are running things in dev that shouldn't be. We know that that's an issue for us as well, because they want to get around this, the rules basically. So yeah, I don't know exactly how that's going to work for us long term, but overall, most of the things that are being used right now at Rexnord are real big. They're really big, really important dashboards. So.
Got it.
For kind of on that side note, for like some of the clients I work with, some of the things that we've set up as well is within production, building like a sandbox for, especially for visualizations, where individuals can publish up to it. No business rule or no business decisions can be made in that sandbox, but they can share. They can. We don't have to duplicate Tableau data sources, kind of in all three as well. So we have the sandbox, and then in order to go into, we actually created the folder for production. So in order to go into production, they actually had to fill out this checklist. So it's the production checklist. They fill it out, gets approved by their manager, because for like the data side, I don't want our team or any of the Tableau admin team to be monitoring the data content. It has to be monitored by their manager or someone else on their team that they can identify as like a project leader. So that helps us. And then that gives us the ability to audit, or at least have the documentation later and say, hey, these are the changes that were made. These are the requests. So anything that kind of falls, it's actually on the user or the developer for their accountability.
Yeah, I like that model. I really do. We basically, in our development system, we have a replicated version of the data source, but it doesn't get updated. So we'll just push it once, and it maybe has data through, at this point, I think some of them are, it's data through like February. And so it's real easy to see that it's a representation, but if you want this to be useful, you need to go through the motions of actually submitting a request and having it moved to production.
Yeah. I know that we have, for especially in the finance realm, or the FinServ side, the analysts are a lot of the times the builders, and they're building reports anyway. So we have to kind of make sure that they have enough flexibility because they're working with production. That's what it is, because they need real-time data for all their analysis. So that is one thing. That's why we can't kind of short them on the data a little bit of like how often. But also with that, everything is built in XML. So Git repositories, all that is actually as well how we can track a lot of it. It's not the greatest way, but I figure between revision history in Tableau, and if you have a server, all the revision history there, and then also doing XML GitHub, you can kind of monitor all the changes and track and historically go back if needed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can always move on to another. That was a really good discussion. Colleen, thanks for sharing a lot of that. Sal, thanks for sharing too. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can tackle this particular topic. And obviously you guys have both experienced completely different methods of doing it, both with the same end result. So that's cool. All right, so then if we're gonna keep going based on the number of votes, next up, do we wanna talk about how do you see the growth of data analytics changing in the next couple of years?
Yes, so I kind of came up with this one. I like to kind of look forward and see, all right, what is the next, like, of my own career? What is the market going to look like? And we actually had a couple of these discussions in some of the data science meetups that I attend. And it was more data science focused, but we had a discussion is, do you think data science is growing? Will there be more jobs in those positions? How do you see the market? How do you see technology changing that? And that's actually what I wanted to bring up here, where it's more of a broader analytics. So it doesn't matter if you're a data engineer, a BI engineer, BA, or data scientist. I kind of want to see what everybody thinks the market's going to go, how technology might change the industry, and maybe your type of job, because it becomes more efficient. So are people needed, as many engineers needed as many data scientists needed? or because technology kind of makes it more efficient. So just kind of curious on your thoughts.
Well, I don't want Sal to think I don't have any, like that this isn't a useful topic, but I would love to hear what other folks have to say too. So I don't want to, dominate the conversation, but I think, at least speaking from my position where I work, data is only becoming more and more important. And so I still think, despite this whole virus, I think that the upward trajectory we're seeing as far as growth and in data jobs, I think that's going to continue. I think now, obviously, we've got a lot more kind of obstacles to overcome as far as everybody working remotely. But I'm busier than ever. I don't know how anyone else feels about it or what their personal experience is, but I mean, there could easily be 3 or 4 of me right now, and all those 4 people would still have plenty of work. So I think projections we were seeing, 6 months ago, as far as the growth of data analytics, I think those are still on track. And if anything, probably more so. I would guess that the field is growing even more so in a world when everybody wants to know the updates as far as, how the virus is affecting things, how other things are affecting their business. I think it's going to be even more important in at least the near future than we even thought it was before.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good way to look at it. Sort of thinking of it from, I guess, a business development perspective, something that I think a lot of folks here at Continuous see pretty often, especially in the Milwaukee area, is a lot of folks are getting really excited about data science, artificial intelligence, things like that. I mean, it's the hot topic right now, in the data analytics space. But when we actually work with clients, I think what we end up seeing quite often is really the need that I think they have more so immediate versus data science or artificial intelligence is just basic reporting. There's still a lot of organizations within the Milwaukee area, at least, who you start working with them and you come to find out a lot of their reporting systems either don't really function the way they should, don't give them the insights they need, or they're just kind of older and kind of difficult to work with, and you don't have the knowledge base to create new content or even maintain the existing systems. Like we see quite often, folks will come out and say, oh yeah, Jim used to maintain this, but he left 5 years ago, so we just run reports out of it now. So that usually creates a lot of work more on the, finding out what happened space versus getting up to that next level, which is predicting what's going to happen, right? And I think that's where data science starts to come in more. So my thought is, I guess over the next couple of years, just based on that, I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of basic reporting. And even self-service analytics for that matter. I think once that starts to fill out more and more, then I think we'll start to see analytics start to shift more into the AI data science realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Do you guys think that, we have 10 seconds. Well, I'll hold that for another conversation.
I'd be interested in the sample data one.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about it. So while Addie's adding that to the discussing column, I can offer one resource that I've leveraged in the past. Obviously we see Kaggle here on the ticket. I think that's by far the most common one. I feel like a lot of folks who are really into analytics use that for their sample data sets, or even for, real data sets for things that they really are passionate about. Another resource that I came across recently is called Mackaroo. It's Mackaroo. It's meant to generate random sample data. So if you're just, doing some basic testing and just want to validate that, a workflow you built or a calculation that you developed is accurate, and you just need some, quote, dummy data to use, Mackaroo is a really useful tool for that. So highly recommend that one.
How do you spell it?
You're testing me now. It's Mackaroo.
Mackaroo. Cool. Yeah.
I feel like everyone is looking it up right now, which is totally fine. Go for it, bookmark it, use it. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I'm always
Looks like
looking
it's
for
maybe, sorry, it looks like it's maybe Makaru with an O. At least that's what I find. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, I think you're right, Colleen. I
I
might have
just wanted
misspoke.
to make sure I was finding the right site.
Yep, no, thanks for correcting that. And I'll throw a link to it up actually in the chat section, just so if you're curious and don't really feel like typing yet, you could just go ahead and click on that link once it appears.
Well, either we all use the exact same ones, or we don't know any other ones.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
guess my
everyone's
problem,
on. I feel like
yeah,
everyone's on Makaru right now, probably just looking at it. So,
I'm scrolling through all the different sets on Kaggle.
Yeah, there's a ton there. I feel like sometimes they just come. It's like almost what I need. Like if
Yeah.
especially for my demos, I'm like, it's almost what I need. Especially like healthcare. I always struggle with healthcare data because it's just like it has to be de-identified. We don't really, no one has created a ton of sample data for it, other than like, unless you're talking like genetic stuff. But yeah.
anybody else have any websites that they're familiar with that they use for either sample data or real data sets? Basically, just treasure troves of data, just so that you don't have to either go out and get the data yourself, start from scratch, talk to your friends, see if they have it. Any other resources that anyone would recommend?
I use Reddit sometimes.
Yeah, I've actually heard. Yeah, for those of you who use Reddit, Jake, I think I think it's called data sets. It's like the
Yeah.
R data sets subreddit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
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 they
it
have
seems
some
that
really
is
interesting stuff.
yeah, for sure. I like that one a lot.
I don't think I've used much of their data sets, but you can go on there and you can request something. You can search through years of history of data sets. And then some of them are just really, really interesting. Like Lyft released all the data from their driverless cars, which I didn't really have a use for, but I'm sure somebody would. And it was on that subreddit.
Yeah, for me personally, just because I'm a total data geek, I think websites like that are really helpful, especially if you're trying to just kind of push your skills further, right? Like, if you, especially in your day job, you sort of tend to get ingrained in whatever data that you typically work with. And sometimes that can force you to create certain types of visualizations, whether it's a certain type of chart, a certain type of dashboard layout, things like that. I was actually just online yesterday looking for new Tableau dashboard design ideas, and I stumbled across one that somebody had developed for the series Breaking Bad, and it was a way they analyzed how many deaths were in the show, which is kind of morbid, but if you're a fan of the show, it's probably not a shock. And the layout was just absolutely incredible. It almost looked more like an infographic poster from like a TV show than an actual Tableau dashboard. So yeah, but without having that particular data set, like how would you ever think to create something like that? So
I like using Yelp. Those are free APIs that you can grab onto, and then like Google BigQuery has a bunch, I believe, that you can kind of tie into that are free, and you can kind of pull from.
yeah, one other one I'll throw out there, and this isn't really sample data at all, but I think, if you're looking to get into API development specifically, obviously Kaggle, Google BigQuery, they all have data sets readily available, ready to go, curated. A lot of times, we tend to find ourselves pulling data via APIs, and that can be difficult because every API is a little bit different in terms of how you have to connect to it, how you actually set up your account with it, and then how you have to actually pull the data. And then even when you get the data back, what does it look like? How do you pick through it, find the bits you need, and then get it into a usable format? My personal favorite API that I've worked with has been the Google geocoding API, actually. So It sort of works like when you're in Google Chrome and you type in an address and you might misspell it or type it kind of funny. Google will always tend to say, oh, did you mean 234 East 5th Street or something like that? So it sort of standardizes and corrects your addresses as you enter them or send them to the API. And then it returns that along with latitude and longitude as results. So it's really useful for a lot of different business or personal use cases. I suggest it because their documentation is really good and it's really easy to follow. And I think if it's going to be your first attempt at connecting to an API, it's probably my best recommendation. So,
yeah, I would second that.
Do you know if it's limited of how many like addresses you have to put through it?
Yeah, great question. So I think it limits you to 2,500 addresses a day. I know if you use it for business purposes, they have like a paid service. I don't remember the pricing. It's been a while since I've used that service, but for businesses, I think they limit you to 100,000 addresses per day. So in a past life, I used it to cleanse, enrich, and master addresses. And that was just a step through in our process to do that. And what we ended up finding was it was for a very large organization, and 100,000 addresses a day was good. The initial heavy lift of getting all of our data and mastering it using the Google API took quite a bit of time, like a couple weeks, just because of the limitations of the API. But once we had all that data mastered, it was just a matter of saying, okay, any new addresses we get, let's fire them off at the API, get the results back. We'll look at those, clean it up based on that. And that was a lot more manageable. It was a lot fewer addresses. It was something that the API could easily handle in a couple hours, and then still enough data where anything that the API couldn't clean up, like a data steward or data owner was able to address manually. So.
No, it's super helpful. Like I know Alteryx has the the geocoding package, but not all of us have it. Not all of us can afford that. So it's I think that's a good option to kind of go and build your own and do that yourself. I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like with any open source solution. Like obviously, there's always a way to do it for free. It's really that balance of robustness of the solution, and then also, how much time do you want to spend on it, right? Because, if you know Python really well, great, knock yourself out. I personally, I feel like I know Python pretty well, and it still takes me probably 5 times longer to write something in Python than it would in Alteryx. Obviously, depending on, what I'm trying to do. But to your point, Sal, yeah, the geocoding capabilities in Alteryx are fantastic. Not everyone can afford them, unfortunately. So in that case, a good alternative, I think, if you can't convince your boss to let you spend the money on it, or just can't bring yourself to do it, would be to check out the Google geocoding API and then brush up on your Python skills. So.
Do you know, this is actually a good thought, is like, are there any other mastering tools like that other than like EDM stuff, but like any tools where you can, like where this is geocoding and actually correcting the addresses, but like maybe company names or company owners, like having all that information? Has anybody used anything else to do that? I will take silence as no.
Yeah, Sal, I feel like you and I are starting to dominate this conversation. So we can move on to the next topic. I will say the one service I've worked with in the past for that has been Dun & Bradstreet. I believe that you can actually leverage their data as well through Alteryx if you're an Alteryx user. If you don't have Alteryx available, kind of similar to the Google geocoding API, Dun & Bradstreet has a really similar API. The only downside I would say to that is Dun & Bradstreet's data and services tend to be a little more expensive. But if you're a large organization, or if you have a lot of data and could get a lot of value out of mastering that data, Dun & Bradstreet services have been really great. In a past life, I also worked with their data. And one of the things that's great about it is I think most companies in the US, if not all of them, and a lot of companies in Europe and internationally also have what's called a DUNS number, which is Dun & Bradstreet's unique identifier. So what's great about it is even on a global scale, it gives you a way to start to tie organizations together. And they've even gone as far as to create hierarchies. So you can start to see, okay, for example, what's the guy's name? Warren Buffett, he owns Berkshire Hathaway. They actually own Dairy Queen. Never knew that until I started playing around in the Dun & Bradstreet data. But it's great because you can actually match Dairy Queen to their data set and then see that they roll up to Berkshire Hathaway. So for a business user, that's great information because then they can start to see, okay, who within this organization is really the influencer? Who's going to make the buying decisions? And who should I really be talking to? But again, you know, in terms of mastering the data, tends to be a little more expensive. I would say if you are looking to get into mastering organizational data, Dun & Bradstreet is far and away the best I've seen. I think one other organization I've seen who does it is Elation, and I believe they also offer a master data management software program as well. But I think their database that they use for, you know, companies and matching is a lot less robust than Dun & Bradstreet.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I'll second that. I mean, at a previous job, we used Dun & Bradstreet really extensively and relied on that data to provide us with like industry information as well about, you know, what industry our customers worked in. And then on top of it, in certain instances, we used it to standardize on the name of the company. So we had, you know, our CRM tool where at the time I was working with attorneys, they could type in whatever they wanted as far as what they thought the company name was. Well, we found certain instances that we really wanted to standardize on what the actual name of that company was, and then created a list of a whole bunch of also known as fields. But it was really valuable from that perspective as well, to get the actual blessed name that they used when they registered with whatever government authority to, you know, create their business. So that was useful too.
Yeah, they're very good for that. We sort of took a similar approach too, where we just said whatever Dun & Bradstreet calls them, that's going to be their, you know, single source of truth name, so to speak. So cool. All right. Did anyone else have any thoughts? We kind of diverted a little bit from the initial topic, talking about sample data. But, you know, obviously you could go a lot of different directions with this too. If you're connecting to APIs, single data sources, third-party data providers that allow you to enrich your data, things like that. Like, we could talk about this all day. So anybody have any other thoughts, questions on this topic, the original topic? Cool. All right. So that being said, I think we're ready to move on to the next one. So we have two more still here to discuss, and these are very different. So I guess it depends on how you're feeling right now after that pretty in-depth conversation. So we've got work from home hacks, which I think all of us probably have come up with at least one by now. And then we have COVID-19 changing everyone's landscape, and companies being, I think that one actually is kind of a longer one. Eddie, if you wouldn't mind, could you expand that one a little bit just so we could see what the whole topic or question is? I think in the top right, yeah, there we go. Perfect. So with COVID-19 changing everyone's landscape and companies being forced to cut back, what data projects do you think are the ones that cannot be pushed, or excuse me, put on the back burner, and which ones do you think can get pushed? So this one's talking more about data project priorities and how COVID-19 has affected that. So kind of like before, both these got the same number of votes. So I'll toss it out to you guys. If anyone has a strong opinion on either one, you know, shout it out, and then we can run with that. I think everyone's running out of coffee. Tell you what, we'll go in order of what's on the board. So let's kick it off with work from home hacks. And then I know we've been dancing around this COVID-19 conversation this whole time. So we'll put it off for a few more minutes, and then we can dive into that. So I guess that being said, does anyone have any work from home hacks, tips, best practices, things they've come up with just, you know, in recent weeks that they're willing to share with the group?
I guess I will. If no one is, I will. All right, big things. We have 3 people here. So my wife and my sister-in-law live with me, and internet speed. make sure you have good internet, first of all. That's number one. And then make your own rooms. That's the biggest thing. Is like if you have multiple people, make sure that you have like one central kind of meeting area, which is like our kitchen. No one works in the kitchen. And then all of us take our own room. I mean, obviously you might not have enough room for that, but like my wife's in the like kitchen area or the dining room table area. And then Alexa, my sister-in-law, is in the TV room. And I take our office that I had built. So it really helps out of like us taking our own area. We don't go into each other's area until the end of the day. And then anytime that we want to meet, we meet in the kitchen.
Yeah, I will say
Yeah,
that's pretty necessary. I have a roommate, and she works in the restaurant industry, so is not working a whole lot now. She's working today, which is why I'm actually in my apartment space. But I've built like a makeshift office in the attic, which is not where you want to spend your entire day, but it gets the job done and is a good place to, actually focus and get stuff done.
Yeah, I'll second that. If everyone can have their personal space, and the internet speed is a big thing too. So here at the house, there's me, my boyfriend TJ, and then we have 3 sons between the 2 of us. And with all the kids working from home, doing school from home, bandwidth can get quite taxed. But that was one thing we needed to make sure when we moved here, was make sure that everyone can get online and stream their shows and play their games and work and do all those things. So we definitely made sure that we had that set up for us. And same thing, we each kind of claim our own space when everybody's working, so that there's no distractions, or at least fewer distractions than would be if we're all sort of sitting together. I guess my other not really hack, I feel like it's not a hack, but I'm really just trying to set up my office space here. I just ordered a keyboard online. Like normally when I would work in the office, I had a docking station for my laptop and then a full-size keyboard, because I have bigger hands than most women, I think. And this little keyboard on this tiny laptop, I'm always typing incorrectly. It drives me batty. So I went online the other day, ordered a wireless keyboard and some other accessories, just so I had like places to put things on my desk. Because I feel like if we're going to be here for another month, I'm going to be losing my mind if I have to keep typing on this little keyboard. But so nothing really earth-shattering, but just kind of logical things, making sure I have all the stuff I need.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of common themes that we can all relate to, particularly having separate spaces, especially if you live with someone else who's also working. Sal, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. My girlfriend uses a space downstairs, and I'm actually upstairs at our house. So it's nice because we'll work during the day. We'll see each other around lunchtime. We'll meet in the kitchen to have some food, which is kind of nice, honestly. Like, when we were still working, at our actual jobs during the day, we would occasionally try to meet up for lunch or stuff like that, but things would always come up or it just wouldn't work out. And now that's a lot easier. So that's been kind of nice. But kind of like you said, we'll meet in the kitchen at the end of the day. It's kind of nice because we can talk about what happened during the day and we're not just all up in each other's space or driving each other crazy. To what both of you said about internet speed, yeah, having high-speed internet is a must, I think, right now. Working remotely, especially, I've been using VPN quite a bit lately with a client that I'm working with. And at first it was okay, but now I'm starting to notice just it's struggling a little bit and that doesn't really perform as well as I wish it did. What have you guys done in regards to connecting to your company's networks? Are you also using VPN? Do you have like a machine at the actual office which you can remote into, or have you managed to find some other workaround or approach that has allowed you to either get around the fact that you're connecting remotely or having to tunnel through VPN?
For us, we have a VDI, which then we connect to via Citrix. So virtual desktop that we connect to. And then so internet speed is absolutely number one. I was having some, like, in the beginning of this, I was having some issues. So I actually I use AT&T, and might recommend it. I got fiber optic, like 1000, which is like a terabyte of data or whatever. I don't even know. It's like a ton of speed, right? The fastest you can, like, one of the fastest you can get, it's $49. I was like, okay, I'll do that. It's worth it. I think for me, I use it enough. Plus, everybody else in the house can stream and do whatever they want and have absolutely no issues.
We also
Yeah,
we also have really fast internet here in Kansas City. We're lucky enough to have Google Fiber. We've got 2 kids at home doing homeschooling during the day. My husband's at home now. Him and I have moved to the basement level, and he's in an office because he is on the phone all day talking. And the kids are upstairs on the top level of the home doing schoolwork, and we haven't had any issues. I also connect to a VDI for my client, and I've had really good speed, really good luck with that. Though some of my teammates have had a little issue with being on their VDI and it being really slow. I have not.
Yeah, we use VPN at Rexnord, and so everything's local on my laptop, and I connect through the VPN to get to the network, and yeah, I haven't experienced many issues with it, slowness or otherwise, but interestingly, I'm actually building a data source right now to show who's working from home and connecting through the various VPNs all over the world, so it's kind of interesting.
It's like data inception.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to sort of ask about with regard to this is with regard to productivity tools. So even before the virus forced us all to be at home, my team at work specifically started to look into different tools to keep track of, like, our to-do lists, our project plans. We started using OneNote more extensively. Does anybody have any tools that you really love as far as keeping track of either project components and like a larger project plan, or just other tools? Like, we started using Microsoft Teams a bit, not just to have like chats or video conferences, but to keep organized documents around projects that we may be working on with particular teams. Does anybody have any good feedback on that?
We use Teams. We also use Jira on a lot of our projects. Even a lot of clients that use Jira is a great tool. I really like it. You can also put links and documents directly in that as well. But I would say I like Slack as well as, like, for communications, and like a lot of companies just don't do Slack though. So that, like, they kind of pull away from that because they think it's, I actually don't know why like companies don't do Slack more, but I'm a big.
Well, yeah, I can say we don't use it because we have Skype. So if we want to IM with someone, we just IM through Skype. And so a lot of that is duplicated in Slack. I do use Slack for a lot of different groups that I'm a member of, but it just sort of seems really all the functionality is duplicated by other stuff that we already use. Like, does anybody use like Microsoft Planner or anything like that? No? We
have it, we don't use it.
Okay. It was something I just started using just a few months ago. And so I use it more for managing my larger projects that have like a whole, however many dozens and dozens worth of steps. I found it's useful. I think it's free with like Office 365, but essentially it's web-based, and it kind of looks a lot like this lean coffee table setup here, where you've got a card, right, with a topic. You might say, okay, I've got to create these training videos. Well, then within that, you can also create a to-do list of all the items that it takes to do that one particular component. I think they call them like buckets or boxes. So for each bucket, you can have a to-do list. And I found it very useful because at least where I work, we get pulled off on these tangents. All of a sudden something's super on fire and it's really urgent. So we've got to like switch gears and we've got to focus on something. And then when you come back to the other things you were working on, I have no idea what the heck it was I was doing last. Yeah. So I can go in there and you set like due dates for things, and it'll alert you like, hey, you've missed a deadline on this. And then I can go back and go, oh, okay, well now I got to get back to whatever this task is, and here's my leftover items that I've got to deal with.
Do
So
you know if you can,
just wondering.
can you share it with other team members so that everybody
Yeah.
can look at where a project is and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I do it more from the standpoint of letting my boss know what it is I'm working on and why I've estimated as much time as I have for a particular project. So if I've told them it's going to take, 120 hours for this particular project, well, here's why. Here's all of the kind of proof to that. Here's all of the steps that is composed of, and here you go. So, I've shared it with them. I know that allows you to do collaborative, like working on a project together, and you can assign it to, one's assigned to Sal, one's assigned to Matt, the other one's assigned to me as far as tasks. You can color code things too, and then change the labels for the colors to say, okay, red means it's super urgent, or green means it's on hold for right now, whatever it is that you want to label them. I found that kind of slick. I'm really kind of liking that for my larger projects, but thought I'd see what other people use.
Yeah, so I'll chime in a little bit. I used to be a tool junkie, especially when it comes to productivity. So a couple tools that I've tested out, and the ones I really like, like Sal said, I really like Slack. I think the big benefit of it is more so around its integration capabilities. So for example, if let's say you had Alteryx server and you were really crafty when it comes to creating integrations, you could easily, right in the middle of a chat with someone, kick off a command to run an Alteryx workflow without ever leaving Slack. I think that's where the real value of it comes in, because I do understand, Colleen, what you're saying about like Skype also kind of doing double duty, so to speak. So I definitely recommend Slack. Smartsheet is another one that I really have used a lot. I'm trying to use it currently a little bit with a client. In a past life, I used it quite a bit. It's great for managing projects, and the learning curve is really low because it looks and feels a lot like Excel. But the capabilities are way beyond that. It's more geared toward project managers. So imagine an Excel spreadsheet, and you can attach files to every row of the Excel spreadsheet. So that's kind of nice. You can also create forms and send a link to the form, kind of like similar to like Google Forms, I guess. And send that to teammates, coworkers, external folks, anybody that you want to. And as they fill out the form, it automatically populates the spreadsheet. And then let's say you also had, a larger project, you can, kind of similar to creating like drill downs in Excel, you have that capability where you can roll up individual line items to a higher level line item. So Smartsheet is really good. Definitely recommend that. The other one is Asana. Which is very similar to Jira that Sal mentioned earlier. Personally, I think Asana is a little more user-friendly. It's a little more appealing to like, kind of a business user and someone who hasn't spent a lot of time, using IT tools, I would say. I've used Asana quite a bit in the past as well. Really liked it. You have the ability to create projects, subtasks, assign things to different coworkers or anyone within an organization. Kind of similar to what you mentioned earlier. You can also color code things, like green is kind of low priority, yellow is a little more high priority, and red means you got to drop everything you're doing and do this right now. It also gives you weekly reporting. So for example, let's say you work with a team. As they get things done, you can get notifications of that. You can also set it up so that once a week it gives you sort of just a high level, hey, here's what happened last week and where you're at. So I definitely recommend that one. I think the reason I say that is Asana, I believe, has a free pricing tier as well. So it's really easy to give it a try, especially if it's a smaller team. So Smartsheet, Asana, and Slack are the three that those are my go-tos. Another one that I came across recently is called Notion. And I hadn't heard of this one. It's almost like Wiki in a way, but it's also like Jira or Trello. They sort of combined Wiki, Jira, and Trello all into one platform. And it really is like, it can kind of be like a hub for an entire department. So it can track tasks, it can be a documentation resource, it can be basically anything you want. It's very configurable. And it's also very hard to describe. So my best recommendation would be just Google Notion And it'll probably be the first thing that comes up. Check it out. I use it for just, my personal life now more and more, I'm finding. So yeah.
Cool. Do we want to, we have this going till 9. Our in-person ones usually go till 9:30. Do we want to cover this last topic on projects, or do we want to save that for next time?
I guess I'd throw it out to the group. Do you guys want to tackle the last topic on here? Or does anyone have any conflicts? If you do, feel free to drop off. Obviously, we have work lives too. So, but if anyone wants to hang out and talk about projects and prioritization, we can do that.
If you guys want to, I'll hang out and talk. I just made more coffee, so I'm ready.
Cool. All right. Well, that being said, I think Jake's ready. I'm ready. So let's dive into this next one. So, with COVID-19 changing everyone's landscape, companies being forced to cut back, I think for us in the analytics space, it hasn't been as big of a deal. I can personally say the biggest change for me has been working from home versus not working from home. But even then, the transition's been pretty smooth. But with that, and just with what's happening with a lot of organizations, what data projects do you guys think are the ones that can't be put on the back burner, and which ones do you think can get pushed? And I know personally, like some of the organizations I've worked with more recently, prioritizing projects has really been the first thing they've started to talk about. Like, okay, we're gonna cut this one for now, or we're gonna put a pause on this one, and then this one that we were gonna do in Q4, we're gonna pull forward, because these are the things that we really care about. We just thought, well, we'll sprinkle them out over the year just so we don't overwhelm ourselves. So I guess, have you guys seen that? What has that looked like? I guess I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I haven't seen too much shifting around, but there is something at the client that I'm currently at. There was this rush to get their own COVID-19 visualization made, which I thought was interesting because there's some really good ones already made and publicly available. But I think they just wanted it in-house that the CEO, CFO could just go to quickly and check out how it's affecting very specific locations. So like where they have offices and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a bit of a fire drill and an interesting one because like Bing's is really good. John Hopkins has a great viz already. So.
Did you by chance refer them to those at all?
No, that it pretty much got done without me knowing about it. And I was like, guys, why?
Yeah. So has anyone else either experienced that, or have you seen other projects move around? And if you have, which projects have tended to become more of a priority than others?
Kind of the second, like Jake said, I've seen a priority of like effect of COVID-19. Like, so looking at like for us flows data, like how is it affected? How did this affect everything? Like, how is our performance doing because of this? Like that's, I most of the data that I've seen, or most of the things that engagements have like switched to be like, it's like we had a bunch of projects for performance and all these other monitoring, and they're like, wait, let's put that on pause and just do that just for COVID.
Yeah, I have been asked to add specific periods to that people can filter to, and one is COVID-19 for a few dashboards.
Especially in the market, like when you're working with marketing, it's like everybody's like, how did this, like what companies are being affected by this and all that.
Yeah, we went one step further and we added fields to our CRM system to track things as far as whether companies that are our customers, whether they're open, whether they're closed, whether they're operating like they're at reduced production, and then dates, like if they're closed, if they have a date when they think that they're going to reopen. And so a lot of things that we were working on got pushed back simply to focus on that so that we can use those additional fields in forecasting so that we know how it's going to affect our business. so less where the virus is, but more what our customers are going through, how is that going to affect our business? I could see though, I mean, I made a recommendation last week to maybe pull down some of those workbooks from Tableau that are using the Johns Hopkins data to look at where the hotspots of the virus are. And even if our customers, even if we haven't recorded yet that our customers are operating at a reduced capacity in any way, they may be affected next because they're in an area where cases are ramping up. I could see that being a really interesting thing to take into account as well.
Yeah, I guess I'll just second what all three of you have said. I've also heard a lot of talks about, what is the impact of COVID-19 on our business? I think that's a common theme just across every organization because there's so much uncertainty, especially in the finance sector, kind of like, Sal, you were referencing. Everybody wants to know, well, how is this going to impact the market? Or where is it going to impact the market? How quickly? And how does that affect us? So yeah, I've also seen that as well. Any other projects you guys have seen either get pulled forward, or what are things you guys actually, we'll flip that. What have you guys seen get pushed just because of this pandemic? Were there projects that either you were directly involved with, or maybe were about to begin working on, or maybe one of your peers was about to begin working on that got pushed out to later in the year or just got dropped altogether?
I'll say that there was a big push, like, because I'm IT adjacent at one of my clients. So, like, one of the big things that we all had to, like, kind of switch gears, all the PMs had to switch gears, and all, like, the IT staff, is to get Citrix on everybody's computer, to get virtual, like, WebEx on everybody's computer, and make sure that everybody is prepped when they work from home. There was a 2-week kind of sprint of being like, let's get everybody ready, especially because office is in San Francisco. Everybody's like, we got to get this like right away when everything was going on. But that was the big switch, is like everything really got put on pause just for 2 weeks, just to get IT and everybody that's connected to IT up and running for all the business units.
Yeah, I would say nothing's really gotten canceled, but I have, we can't have every project be high priority. So some things just had to naturally sort of fall back a little ways. And again, I mentioned this one data source I'm working on. Management wants to know how many people are working from home versus working in an office. So, that's a data source that I've been working on. So that, and then some of the other things that we're working on as far as business forecasting, those are taking more precedence. And then other stuff that is still important just has to be less so by, because not everything can be number one top priority. So yeah, definitely nothing for me is saying we can't do this or whatever. They want us obviously to do it all. It's just not possible.
Yeah, we've also, kind of like you, Sal, I think, a lot of focus was shifted right away on IT projects, specifically getting Zoom deployed to the organization. Initially, it was scheduled for Q4, and now we have it. So, so the priority on that definitely shifted, and rightfully so. I mean, it's made collaboration a lot easier. Like I honestly don't know how we would accomplish some of the things we're working on right now without it. Just because sometimes you have to have that face-to-face interaction. Screen sharing is a lot easier, I feel, with Zoom and just other, video conferencing tools. So for me, that was the one thing I saw kind of dominate the list, because I'm also IT adjacent at the moment. So, even though I wasn't directly involved on the project, I saw kind of just the priority of it skyrocket, and a lot of the folks who were impacted by it. Anybody else have any thoughts on?
Side note, if everybody, I know we could either leave or be done, but my brother, he's a VP of analytics at a healthcare analytics company, which he then provides like bed ICU projections and ventilator projections, and they're working on some cool things of just trying to figure out capacity within certain areas. I think there's a lot of cool little things that are happening around COVID-19 if you're a data analytic or a data head like I am, I'm like, ooh, this is really interesting.
Cool. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to add, thoughts, things they've seen, questions for the group? All right. Okay, well, on that note, that brings us to the end of the to discuss column of the Lean Coffee Table. So anybody have any questions, thoughts, any like additional items for the team that you want to throw out there? I know we have a few items left on the board. I think what we're going to do is we're probably going to end up saving those for the next meetup. So, you know, join us again next month. I'm sure we'll have some time to go over those next few topics. But before we go, just if you guys have any questions for the group, you know, you have a pretty good group of folks in the room right now. Any random things you want to discuss, anything you wanted to get out of this meeting, you know, feel free to chime in real quick.
I just wanted to note that we'll be figuring out a date for our next virtual meetup. And we talked about this earlier, but lots of continuous folks on here. So Colleen, thank you tons for joining and chiming in. Let's keep sharing these. I think that there's been a ton of great conversation. We'll definitely move these 3 that weren't discussed into the next board, but bet your friends next time, and let's keep talking next time. And yeah, that's all I got.
Cool.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Matt,
Thanks, Eddie.
for moderating. You did awesome.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for contributing. We'll talk to you next month.
Yeah, thanks. It was really good to actually see people.
Yeah.
Agreed. So.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Happy Friday.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.